America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next order of business is to approve tonight's agenda. Anybody wants to look it over, make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Any discussion about tonight's agenda at all? All those in favor? Aye. Any nays? That's unanimous. We have an agenda, and we'll move on to the minutes for August 19th, 2024. Commissioners, if you've had a chance to read that over, if you have any corrections or anything that needs to change, if we could have discussion about that. If not, if somebody wants to make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any nays? There's no nays. Passes unanimously. We have item number 5 as public comment, and I think we do have public comment or somebody here that wants to speak. You can come to the podium. You've had a chance to read over the decorum policies. Generally, we give people opportunity 6 minutes, state your name and your address, and we'll
Yeah, Karen Balzer. I live at Lake Ridge Crossing, 9614 8th Street. And I was wondering why there is a 2+ year backlog for the city of Lake Elmo to take down dead and damaged trees that are a threat to neighbors' property and to people on the walking paths.
Well, I don't know, and just generally as our policies state, we don't get an exchange of back and forth as far as answering questions, but your comment is noted in this forum, and we can talk to city staff as well about that issue.
Okay, yeah, I have talked to Marty Powers about that.
Okay.
And does Lake Elmo have an arborist on staff or that could look at these trees or?
That, again, I don't know, and we're not here to get into a back and forth in public comments, but I do appreciate you taking the time to make note of your concerns.
So one question. So you gave your address, so I assume these trees are near your property?
Yes, there's a bunch of these trees right back behind my house, and there's a walking path between these trees and my house. They're very close. These trees are about 70 feet tall. They're cottonwoods. They grow very quickly. They're brittle trees that have shallow roots, and now with all the houses built around there, they're sitting in water all the time, which makes it a very bad situation. During the last storm, one of these trees fell, just missed my house. I got very lucky. And now there's several others that are big ones that are leaning over towards my property and my neighbors.
Okay, thank
And
you.
over the walking path.
Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. We have for our next item, the resignation of Commissioner Vittorio Bloyer. Do you have a short presentation on that?
No,
or-
just informational wise, in June of this year, Vito did put in his resignation from the Parks Commission, so we're looking for the commissioners to accept his resignation to open that position up for any other community members.
Sounds good. Do we have a, did he submit an actual, well, we know he's.
He submits it to the assistant clerk.
to staff, okay. Do we have a motion to accept that resignation?
Motion to accept the resignation of Commissioner Bloyer.
Is there a second?
I reluctantly second it.
Is there a discussion on that? I'll just make the comment that I told him privately, I'll say it publicly. I appreciate him doing the work and volunteering, and by golly, if I can do anything about it, we'll get an Instagram City Parks account going sometime for him, so.
It's nice having a young man
Right.
around here.
Right.
All those in favor of accepting the resignation of Commissioner Bloyer, aye, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? There are no nays. That passes. Next item is the Lake Elmo baseball donation.
So the Lake Elmo Baseball Association reached out to the city of Lake Elmo and is looking to donate a scoreboard to the Lions Park area. Our current scoreboard there was installed or was manufactured in 2007. Based off that Medtronic scoreboard, the life expectancy of that is that normally that 10 to 15 years. So we are getting to that time frame. They're looking to donate up to, or they got donations of up to about $15,000 for a new scoreboard that they'd like to install again at Lions Park at this time. So they are looking for the Parks Commission to review that application, or sorry, that suggestion, and move that to City Council for approval. With our discussion, we should look at those considerations of that donation and always indicate in our minutes and notes any agreements or prohibits from that donation as well. So,
Okay. Do we, commissioners, have any questions for staff?
Couple questions. I assume they filled out the donation form.
they did.
Thank you. And when will this be done?
So they're looking to do it yet this fall at Lions Park for the fall baseball yet.
And we're confident, staff is confident that the donation will cover their part of the scoreboard?
Correct. In this actual donation, they're actually donating the scoreboard itself, which is value of about 15,000, up to 15,000. So once, so we're taking possession of the scoreboard initially and installing that.
Okay. That's all I got.
I've got a quick question, Adam. Does the city need to carry insurance or anything like that on something like a scoreboard?
So we do have insurance on the property and its contents, so that would be included on that, just like their dugouts and our fences and
great.
things like that as well.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions, or?
I guess their biggest interest is, the reason for it is just the age of it and their ability to connect with it. So right now, there's like a wireless remote that will do your innings, your outs, and things like that, and sometimes that becomes troublesome just with that connection back and forth. So this new one will be able to be run by an app through an iPhone. That's the technology they're looking to go to that way. That can be user-friendly from club to club or from user to user to operate and to utilize that.
Yeah, our end of the year tournament, there were quite a few hiccups with it not
Correct.
connecting.
Yep.
I'll say.
And there must be Wi-Fi that's available generally there.
Yep. That would actually be part of the scoreboard.
Yeah,
That
it's
would
a
send that
radio
signal.
signal. Oh, okay,
So
all right.
power is already to the scoreboard, so that would generate from the
Okay,
scoreboard.
thank you.
Well, if there aren't more questions, we could, I know sometimes because of our commission size, we have discussion before we take a motion, or we can take a motion and do it the formal way and have discussion afterwards about this. Well, we have a motion on the table.
I move to recommend to the council accepting the donation of the new scoreboard to be placed in Lions Ball Field from the Lake Elmo Baseball Association.
I second.
We have a motion to discuss. Is there discussion on this? I guess I'll say I don't see, as far as the requirements, anything that would be prohibitive of doing this.
I would say I like it when these groups that use these things put some of their equity into the facility, so I think this is a good donation.
The only suggestion I might make is if we want to limit or restrict any advertisement on the scoreboard if it's city property. Currently, right now, the sign, I believe, says Lake Elmo Baseball, or Lake Elmo.
But this is not, and this is open up a new can of worms. This is not, it's gonna be similar to the one that's there, right?
Correct.
So there's not gonna be neon lights of flashing Coca-Cola or something like this.
Not necessarily. So we could put restrictions on, I've been in discussion with them, we want to remain like the same size as far as the structure wise, because replacing the poles and all the electrical could get more expensive, so they are looking to keep it about the same size. You know, it might be a little bigger if they want to include innings and things like that, but it should be relatively about the same size.
Adam, you're saying the current one has Lake Elmo baseball on it?
Yes.
Does it say donated by, or?
No.
I certainly have no objection personally of if it said donated by, that's what they're doing, and having that name recognition is, I don't have a concern with that. I don't know that it should say just Lake Elmo baseball without that donated by. I think that adds some clarity to that. That's my personal perspective on it. Have they presented exactly what they want?
They have not. No.
Okay. Well, I guess, I mean, our motion is to accept a donation for a new scoreboard. I guess, Hank, sort of to your point, we could, we could drill down A, B, C, D, E, F, G as far as requirements, like you shall not have Coca-Cola, you shall not have, but I guess I don't necessarily
The only thing I would
see the
place-
need for that.
The only thing I might put in there is that it would be similar in all fashions to the existing
Yeah,
board.
yeah. Well, in that case, then it would, it may say Lake Elmo baseball again.
It might, and I don't have a big problem, but similar allows staff to work it out.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll restate that move to recommend that the city council accept the donation.
Well, I think you have to just amend your motion.
Oh, I amend my motion, you
Yeah.
wanna vote on that?
Yeah.
With the inserting of the word of a new scoreboard similar to the one existing be placed in Lions Ballport from the Lake Elmo Park
We
Association.
have a second of Hank's amendment to his own motion?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? So the motion to amend would be that city council accept a donation of a new scoreboard similar to the existing to be placed at Lake Elmo Ball Field from the Lake Elmo Baseball Association.
Agreed.
Okay. All those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? No. So, back to our original, we have to,
We need to vote the first one
we
down.
do, no, we need to just, we voted on the amending the motion, now we need to actually vote for the motion.
Sure.
I always get a little, that second step seems tedious, but it's correct. So, any further discussion on our current motion? Okay, so the motion is to recommend city council accept a donation of a new scoreboard, be placed, scoreboard similar to the one existing to be placed at Lake, Lions Ball Field from the Lake Elmo Baseball Association. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? There's no nays, that motion passes. And we are on to Friends of the Sunfish letter of intent item.
The Friends of Sunfish, along with Tony Manzaro, approached me in the last couple of months and discussed a potential opportunity for a grant funding program that is it is part of the DNR and the MPCA. $20 million has been set aside from the 3M PFAS settlement. There's 3 opportunities for grant opportunities. This last one is being directed to organizations that would like to submit an application for any applications that would benefit the recreational activities in those areas that have been affected. So with that, I'll invite Tony up to discuss this project. And again, this is the first step of the grant process. Is just a letter of intent only. So it's not no funds are being asked of or from the city at all for this. Just a letter of intent of their project to the program.
Good evening. I'm Tony Manzara. I live at 5050 Kirkwood in Lake Elmo since 1988. And I'm the person who started the nonprofit that built the Nature Center in Sunfish Lake Park. And when the city of Lake Elmo instituted a Adopt a Park program in spring of 2018, we adopted Sunfish Lake Park. And we've been trying our best to help out. So the background of this, press that. Okay. Okay, there we go. And then you just hit up or down to go. Okay, thank you very much. The background of this is that the state of Minnesota settled with 3M for $850 million due to PFAS contamination of the water supplies and the environment. Most of that money, $775 million, goes for clean water. So the home purification systems and the improvements in the public water systems are being paid for out of that fund. However, there is a $20 million allotment out of that $850, which is set up for environmental restoration and things like that. And out of that, there are 3 what they call priority 2 goals. Priority 1 is safe drinking water, and the first one is to restore, protect, and enhance aquatic and terrestrial resources. The second is increase understanding of fish tissue contamination. The third is to improve and enhance outdoor recreational opportunities. And the group that worked on the RFP included people from the government, people from the citizens groups, people from 3M, and people from the trustees who are the MPCA and the DNR. And among those people there were representatives from Lake Elmo, including Administrator Christina Hunt, then later on Interim Administrator Clark Schrader, and Jim Kelly, and Councilmember Jeff Holtz, and myself, and Howard Marcus. And so we got an idea of how this is going to work and how the proposal would be reviewed. And I think we have a pretty good chance of getting something from each of these 3 goals. And so far as I know, no one else from Lake Elmo has taken up the effort of writing a proposal for any of these. And if you know anything that contradicts that, please let me know. I don't want to compete with anybody. But as a member of Lake Elmo EDA, I was able to get part of it on the work plan, and that is to pay off the general obligation funds on the landfill closure, so we can make some money from a solar power station built on it. The second one is basically to study the fish of Sunfish Lake to see if people need to be advised whether they can eat them or not. That's never been done, and I hope to do some further testing that would understand the difficulty a little bit better. There's different theories about how Sunfish Lake got contaminated. I think with a few tests we could help figure it out. And the third one is what I'd like to ask for this evening, and that is to get some money to build ourselves a boardwalk across the arm of Sunfish Lake. And the LOI process is part of the RFP, and what the trustees decided was that since they didn't know who was going to ask for what funding or what the story would be, they would do a 2-step process. And the first is to submit a letter of intent, which would then be reviewed by the trustees. And then if they think it makes sense, then they would invite that entity or person to propose. And this could be a government organization, it could be a nonprofit, it could be an Indian tribe. There's a number of different categories of people who are allowed to make a proposal. And as the city of Lake Elmo, we could do it, or as the Friends of Lake Elmo Sunfish Lake Park, which is a 501c3, we could do it. So we're kind of splitting it up here. So the reason for the boardwalk is that it would be really neat. And the Sunfish Lake Park trail design now has 2 out and back stubs, one to the north end of the North Arm and one to the south end, but they don't go anywhere. So you have 2 dead-end trails. Before the trails were realigned and the water level came up, there was a loop trail on the south side, so you could walk along the lake shore. But that's no longer there by agreement between the city and the Minnesota Land Trust that was abandoned. So a boardwalk across that arm of the lake would be a really ideal place to do a bird watching. It would be a great place to do fishing, it would be, or pond dipping, or just sit out there and have a smoke and enjoy nature. What I'm asking for is that the trustees would fund the boardwalk project for $500,000, and that the organization Friends of Lake Elmo Sunfish Lake Park would administer the grant and manage the work. Basically, we'd contract out most of what has to be done, and there would be very little involvement of the city staff, basically just to make sure that we're not exceeding our plans. And we already managed $650,000 in money from the DNR for the buckthorn removal project and restoration of Sunfish Lake Park. You can see on this little picture here where the red line is that I've drawn on the right side, that is where the boardwalk would go. And the dotted or the dashed yellow line is where the trail was abandoned, which used to be a loop across there. Here's a little close-up of, and there's probably 2 or 3 possible routes across Sunfish Lake, but they're not much different from each other. There's roughly 250, 220 feet to get across and onto dry land to build a boardwalk across there. I've done a bit of due diligence on this project. I met with the DNR, Dan Scollin, who explained that since Sunfish Lake is navigable water, we can't have a floating boardwalk. We have to have it raised so that people could canoe under it. So that's point 1. It has to have a 3-foot clearance above the ordinary high water line. I met on site with Jay Riggs and Karen Walk from the Valley Branch Watershed District. They control the wetlands, and they indicated where the line would be, how far we'd have to go before we built something. And if you put posts to hold something up, that's not considered building in a wetland. If you actually built a structure in the wetland, that would require a whole lot more permitting. But if we get across the wetland with posts, then they said there wouldn't be any real problem getting that done. I met with Andrew Moser of the Land Trust, and he saw no conflict with the conservation easement. There are some comparable boardwalk structures nearby, and I'm working to get what the installation and maintenance cost is on those structures. City of Oakdale, City of Maplewood, City of Rosedale, Friends of Creeks Meadows up in Grantsburg. I got some very interesting information. I met with some engineers from Stantec Consulting who does our work on the buckthorn removal, and they said $500,000 is about right. And we talked about various possibilities for what the structure would look like and how it would be constructed. These are the 4 comparable ones that are in Oakdale, Maplewood, Roseville, and Craigs Meadows. That shows the length and the situation of the various boardwalks. It turns out that the depth of the water in Sunfish Lake at that point is at the most 6 feet, maybe 7 now that we got a lot of rain. So it's not a particularly big problem to put posts down to hold it up. It's not like you have a 40-foot depth of water you're trying to cross with a Golden Gate Bridge or anything like that. This is what the one in Oakdale looks like, and that's that's 400 feet long, and the construction cost was $235,000. It's built the way we would build this one most probably. There's a statement from the park superintendent from Oakdale as to what what the maintenance has cost them over the last 10 years. Oh, there was a question when we were talking about this that came up from Chair Kastler here about, if we built that boardwalk across that arm, would it benefit the people who are using the new park? And that all depends on whether the city decides to gain access along that, the northeast edge of Sunfish Lake. And if you look at the cadastral map, the plot marked L is is what your new park is going to be. That's the next agenda item. The plot marked M is owned by the Chavez family, so you could get an easement from them across that little corner maybe. And then the part one marked N is owned by the Homeowners Association of Hamlet. So you need to agree with them to get an easement or a trail through there. And then that would allow people to walk from the new park to the north part of Sunfish Lake there, and then they could cross over on the boardwalk to the south part, or they could keep going west. So that's just an answer to that question. I don't know the answer. But if the city decides to go ahead with this kind of activity, it would be really neat. This is taken off the Washington County Property Viewer. That's who owns what land around the whole Sunfish Lake. So if you have any influence over people, you can talk to them. So that's my presentation. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you. There are questions or comments? I guess mostly questions, clarifications.
If not, as Adam says, the permission to give the LOI, the letter of intent, does not require us to actually submit a proposal. It's basically we're asking for a ticket to do the proposal. So if we do get the invitation to do the proposal, I'd come back with the final proposal and make sure nobody's unhappy about any part of it.
Okay. So you're looking for a letter of support from the city for that letter of intent?
Sure.
You intend on doing that letter of intent regardless?
Well, if the Parks Commission said that this is not a good idea, then I wouldn't do it. I mean, I'm not trying to cause trouble. If the Parks Commission is happy with this idea and they like to go ahead, I'd be happy to do it.
Sure.
And a letter of support would be marvelous. Thank you very much.
Okay. I do have a question, and I don't know if you'd know the answer or not, but I think it's one of the first bullets on there when you're talking about the due diligence is the navigable waters. And it actually surprised me that this could be done at all with, it's not a recreational lake, where there's boats and so forth out there. But it is a big enough lake as they designate it as navigable.
Right. The federal law about navigable waters is very, very broad. It covers almost anything.
Well, how would you be able to do this at all, I guess? How would you be able to build that bridge as a sort of as, I'm having trouble understanding how you'd be able to do that legally.
Well, what you'd have to do is like they did in Oakdale, you take, actually I would wait until it freezes and then go cut holes in the ice and drive posts, down into the mud as far as you hit, until you hit something solid, and then build a structure over the top of it.
No, I'm just wondering how it's allowed. And it sounds like you did due diligence on it, but I'm just wondering how that's allowed at all.
Well, according to Dan Scollin of the DNR, you can, the owner of a body of water or the land around it could do this if they want to, as long as they don't interfere with navigation. Huh. And on a body of water this small, they don't expect a steamship.
Right.
It's only 5 or 6 feet of water. So it's only recreational. So a person would have to be able to canoe or a little rowboat under it, or it's relatively let's put it this way, it's a relatively low hurdle for a lake like this. If we're going to try to do something like this across Lake Elmo or something like that, then you have a lot more trouble. Yeah. But this one would be not necessarily a slam dunk, but it's allowed.
Okay. Other questions? again, we could have some informal discussion before we took a motion if we wanted to, or we could, if we all agreed to, and if somebody objected to it, we could just go make a motion and then have discussion. Trying to be flexible, if we wanted to talk about it before having.
Well, since I'm good at amending stuff afterwards, move to recommend the city council support for the Friends of Sunfish to submit a letter of intent for the boardwalk project through the priority to settlement.
Do we have a second for that?
I'll second it.
All right, so the motion is as reads in the staff report currently. And discussion,
Do we need to put in that, with that project, the priority 2 settlement, do we need to put goal 3 in there?
I think that would be for the applicants.
Yeah.
Is that just based for the
that's good.
applicant part?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess I'll make a comment in that, it's a two-faced comment. One, the Nature Center and Tony specifically has done a lot of work, tremendous amount of work. And going after this money, as you kind of referenced, going after this money that's available, there's probably not a lot of people doing it, and you're putting a lot more work into it. I love it. I do, when I look at the presentation, I'm struck by the potential intrusiveness of a boardwalk through a nature preserve. I don't know, it's just something that potentially is there, and I kind of, when I was looking at it, I kind of thought that it was counter to what the preservation goals and what the Nature Center is usually advocated typically. And I don't know if you want to speak to that further, but I do have concerns about that. I think it would be great to have a wharf or a pier. I'm personally not sure about cutting a lake. It's not cutting it in half, but cutting it into a quarter, I guess, is what it's doing. So that's my comment.
I can speak to that if you like.
Sure, yeah. I'd appreciate that.
When the city of Lake Elmo decided to install biking trails in Sunfish Lake Park, they had to abandon half of the walking trails. And part of the abandonment was chosen by city staff pretty much without consultation, but it was basically done on the basis of which trails would be the hardest to maintain, so they wanted to abandon those. And that's a very logical reason for doing it, but what happened was they cut off some of the more interesting places, and I can go into great detail, but I won't. So the idea of the boardwalk is to allow people to have a continuous loop across the lake. It will be relatively low, it's not gonna stick up. And I understand your comment that if you look at a pristine wild lake and you see a little bridge over it, you're saying, well, why is this? I mean, I can understand that sentiment, but from our standpoint, it really allows people to have more access. And that's one of the priority 2, goal 3 intents. And that's kind of why we thought about doing it.
The devil, the details will really bring out when they bring it back if they're successful. That's where we'll really get into this. And I agree, I'm glad we're making an effort to get some of that money. I'm glad to hear that most of it's going for the water, to clean up the water, but this is a good project. The other thing is I just used a bridge like this in Indiana, and it did entice you to get out and complete your walk, and in the lake, you got to see aqua life like turtles and frogs that weren't visible from the shore. Now, whether they be visible from a dock, I don't know. But the nice thing about the bridge is it invites you to go out into the lake.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's my general comment there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add, I totally hear your point too, but, I don't even know what this is, if it's a pond, but it's up by the Gateway Trail. And there's, over by the golf course, and there's a boardwalk that cuts across that. And since I'm out running and I'm on trails a lot, I mean, it's so cool to run or walk across that boardwalk in a sunrise or, I mean, it gives you access to that water that you wouldn't normally have. So I also see that point as well. But I also hear you, because I already thought of that too, but it does, it invites you to something that you wouldn't otherwise be able to take part in.
I guess I would think we could do you could do a boardwalk more to the west that isn't directly cutting across. You could skirt the edge and accomplish the same things without it being as intrusive. And as far as the trails being cut off, as an avid hiker in the Boundary Waters, at least as much as I can, I prefer doing the loops, right? I don't want to do the down and back again. That's just not quite as fun as, but I think that there's also ways to do that with again, it being on the west side. So I would be more in favor of us supporting that, but that's my perspective. You have any comments down? You feel a little
well,
isolated down there.
I feel that too. Yeah, I guess the only comment that I have is, I think one thing that's nice about a lot of boardwalks is that they increase the amount of area that's possible for people using mobility devices to access. And that might be one thing to potentially consider here is in the letter of intent, even though like all of the pieces necessarily wouldn't be there to make this ADA compliant, but just kind of being forward thinking there and leaving that option open as a possibility could be great. Mm-hmm.
It turns out that it's almost ADA compliant to get down the trail there. There's one place that would have to be leveled to 10 to 1.
Okay.
But the boardwalk itself wouldn't be steep, and the other side of that's coming in from the south edge. There's a hill there. On the north edge, it's actually relatively smooth, and so I would say there'd be very little grading required to make the whole trail ADA compliant. And at some point, the city may want to or may not want to do some kind of a surfacing. Right now, it's only dirt and it's mowed. But you could get through most of it with a motorized wheelchair.
Thanks.
Further discussion or questions? Comments, concerns? I'll call the question. The motion is to recommend to City Council support for the Friends of Sunfish to submit a letter of intent for the boardwalk project through the Priority 2 settlement, excuse me. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? That's a nay for me. That's 4 to 1, that passes. Next item is the Legacy Development Park name.
As you know, the city of Lake Elmo has acquired a 29-acre parcel in connection with the North Star development, which was approved by City Council in 2023. The newly acquired land is mostly wooded and abuts up to the Sunfish Lake. The property location is about 1 mile from downtown. With our intent, we are looking to, we reached out to the community for suggestions for the new park name. We did a couple of events, or a single event, which was National Night Out event in August. And then we provided a posting on our website where individuals could put name suggestions, and those came back to city staff. Overall, there's 40 name suggestions that were received over the 30 days. At this point, we're looking for the Parks Commission to recommend to City Council approximately 2 to 3, 3 to 4 names that they would suggest for the new park name. You've received a copy of the list that was provided. Those have not been screened. That's the full list, so no bias has been put in there. There's a small column in the middle that does indicate how many times that name may have been submitted. The same name was submitted. At this time, there's no financial obligations for naming the park. Staff suggests we review that policy and come up with a unique name that would that'd be home for our new park in Lake Elmo.
Are there questions for staff? The development, is it called North Star or is it called Legacy?
So North Star is the development that's currently being built. Legacy is the development just north of there.
Oh, okay.
That's infill. Yep.
I was getting that confused. So-
Isn't it Legacy of North Star? Is that the full name? Okay.
And can you provide clarification? The ones that are on your staff report listed 1 through 4, are those staff choices or why are those listed there?
So those are just suggestions of like the 3 to 4 that we would suggest as a recommendation there. I take back probably the first suggestion for a couple reasons. One is the naming of the park. Using the Shilkins name may need a notification from that homeowner or that owner that they'd be willing to do that, along with Heritage being a name that we already have as one of our parks as well, so.
We're gonna have discussion before we make a motion?
Yeah, discuss.
Anybody object to having some discussion before we make a formal motion? Okay.
Yeah, I just have a quick question for you, Adam. The Coneflower Park, in looking at the policy, I'm just curious, would there be any plan for the city to do some more prairie plantings in that area to get some of those coneflowers in, or is it mostly gonna be kind of this wooded area?
It is a nature area, so
Okay.
like digging or anything like that, paved trails will not happen in there. It's
Okay.
all gonna be like nature trails and things like that. Future grants or possibilities of for natural seedings and things that could happen. Or I
Okay.
should say, for flower or native plantings could happen.
Okay, so what's there with the vegetation is basically going to stay there as the
Correct,
vegetation?
yeah.
Okay,
So
great.
like I said, the city would construct some navigation trails or a single trail loop through there,
Okay.
but that would be all that would potentially be done.
Okay, thanks. I guess for a discussion then, I feel like Coneflower Park would maybe not make my list of recommended names unless someone has other information for me. Just because I feel like some other vegetation is probably more symbolic of, or would pop to mind a bit sooner. So
You have
try to
suggestions?
not be confusing. Well, Oak Park is on there, which I think is a better suggestion.
Yeah, have we, as a part of the development, was there a survey done of the vegetation? Do you know what the oak population is there?
No, I do not, no.
I didn't, when I visited there, I haven't seen a whole lot of oak, actually. Have you?
Yeah, well, yeah, no.
Other than in the note, it says the park has preserved pine and oak trees.
Yeah, I don't know about pine either, honestly.
What about Tree Park? No.
Fill in the blank. I like the name of the family, even though they have got to go talk to them. I think that addresses could address a lot of the angst that happened because of the development, because of the removal of everything but the barn. That's, and I realize you'd have to go talk to them about doing it, but I think that makes sense.
I like the family name being kept into it.
Yeah.
I do too. And then Polaris, I'm not a fan of that because I immediately thought of the company and the brand. You know, I was like, oh, does Polaris have something to do? You know, I just immediately went there, so that, I'm not a fan of that name. But that's me.
That did not pop up when I was looking at it, but I did immediately recognize the connection to North Star and the farm there. And when I was looking at the list, you know, the Milky Way thing also, I thought that was kind of unique in that it talked about the rationale was making a connection to the family and to the history there. I think that the specifics, if that name is recommended, could probably use a little, you know, updating from this, you know, folks here, but I agree, that's something to the, I guess, like, anthropogenic history of that site. Seems nice.
Yeah, there might be another option, although I don't have it right this second.
Yeah, I guess I'd tend to go, I don't know, Hank, I hear what you're saying as far as alleviating, so I wonder if it even has the opposite effect. Who knows? I guess
Who
for some
knows?
people, for the others. I'd actually like to go farther back. I think I would, well, one, I do want to recognize the larger discussion, which has been brought up tonight already, that there is something of a, this surrounds a lake, or it surrounds a lake, with a park on the other side. Some continuity with Sunfish, I think, would make sense. Especially if we go down the road of potentially developing a trails that connect. So to me, it makes intuitive sense to call it something like Sunfish East.
I was just gonna suggest East Lake,
Yeah.
East Lake Park.
So, yeah, Sunfish East comes to mind for me. I also, I'm a big fan of, you know, we should recognize the heritage, recognize the fact that this open land's been there for a long time. I'd like to go, I would, maybe a little bit of left field, but as far as a name, Aguadashi is an Ojibwe word for sunfish. I think that would be,
How do you spell it?
well, we'll get to that in the details, but that's a potential. Again, it adds to the continuity of Sunfish on the west, Sunfish Lake. It recognizes the heritage. It alleviates concerns about, well, it doesn't alleviate any concerns about what happened to the property necessarily, but. So strike that. Those would be my two. Anybody else have thoughts on it?
I think that's really nice. A question for you, Adam, before we go further. So the ask for us is to give city council a kind of a small subset of names here that they're going to pick from.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and again, when staff did review these, we did alleviate away from any names that would be similar to sunfish or had sun included or fish included, just to eliminate the confusion from one side to the other. Not that it would initially, but just so we don't have that same park name and people are like, oh, how do I get to the
That's
the
why
other
East
name?
Lake might be a better.
But that was the only reason.
East, what would you?
East Lake Park. The other thing, and the other members might not know this, is I think that the last 3 or 4 times we've done this, the city council has done whatever they want to do, okay? And in this
The dog
particular
park.
area, they seem to want to exercise their creativity. But I think we should submit it, but
We
Yeah.
are also exercising our creativity.
I agree there.
That's their purview thing. It's one of the big benefits of being a.
Just to tell you, they do exercise it,
I-
versus a lot of things, they might just say, okay, fine, or not, but this particular case, the last couple times we've done it, they've just picked something else.
Yeah, okay, back to your point of East, I find East Lake very confusing because it's not called East Lake. If you call it East Lake Park, you say, what East Lake? I'd be much more apt to, I'll go back to the, conversation of, yeah. I could be confused by that.
I don't have any problem with Sunfish, I just
Yeah.
addressing the staff concern. I don't think they should have.
Yeah, let's meet at Sunfish East. I think that, yep.
I mean, I guess I feel like the language difference is fairly distinct, and therefore I feel like it would be, I don't have a big problem with that, or I don't see a huge conflict with that. I feel like people will not be confused if they're trying to find their way there. Of course, I mean, I think if there's ever a renaming of other parks, that might be an issue, but I don't know. I don't have a big issue with Aguadashi being on our Rolodex here.
Gotcha.
I would still recommend the family name in some form, Sunfish East, and however you spell the Native American name for Sunfish.
I've got the spelling, so we got that covered.
So those are the three I'd suggest,
Well,
based on what I've heard.
Yeah, Hank, would you recommend an edit to the word heritage? Because there's heritage
Yeah, I wouldn't put heritage in there, that's fine. The name of the family is fine.
Yeah, just the name and park is fine, the Shilkin Park. Or Shilkin Farms Park, if that's listed, both of them listed, either one would be fine.
Further discussion, or if somebody wants to make a motion, and then we can further discuss again.
I'll make a motion for those three that I just mentioned, because I can't spell the one.
Well, you didn't spell the other ones either.
The family name or the family farm, either one.
So Shilkin, can you state it in a,
Yes, I will motion to recommend to the city council the following names to consider as a formal name for the newly acquired property. Shulkin Park, Sunfish East Park, and,
Aguadashi Park.
thank you.
Could you spell it?
Agwadashi. Excuse me. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have further discussion. Certainly change that, amend it.
How do you spell it again?
Agwadashi. It's fairly phonetic, except for that double A.
It'd be Aguadashi Park, correct?
Aguadashi Park. Is that your motion, Hank?
Yes, that's correct.
Further discussion?
Can't wait to see what city council wants.
I'll call the question. Motion is to recommend city council the following names to be considered as a formal name for the newly acquired property at Legacy North Star. 1 is Shilkin Park, 2 is Sunfish East Park, and 3 is Aguadashi Park. All those in favor? Aye. Any nays? No nays. Motion passes. And we'll go on to our next item, which is the aforementioned park construction. Name it before we build it.
So with the With the construction of the North Star development, again, we accepted or we received the 29.9 acres along with park dedication funds as well. Beginning this fall, city staff would like to begin constructing those trails and constructing that park to be ready by and usable by 2025 when homes begin being built there. Staff is looking to furnish the park with a sign, some benches, as well as trash receptacles throughout the park. Would the Parks Commission like to recommend to City Council the recommendations the staff has put together for projections of the park, projections of the construction of the park? So, as noted in the staff report, I do have the entrance sign, the park benches, concrete, and garbage receptacles for a total of about $12,000, just a little bit more. And again, those will be constructed beginning this fall into next spring, so that that park is usable and open during the 2025 season. With that, I'll take any questions. Again, these funds would be directly coming from the parks dedication funds within the city budget.
Questions for staff?
So the trails, are they there?
No, there'd be one single track made by city staff, so that city staff would map that trail, mow that trail, and that's all that would be. It'd be a basic, there's part of that, that dedication of land there prohibits us from having any asphalt trail or any construction of trails, so it'd be nature trails only.
Do we have a layout of that trail or approximately where it's gonna be?
Not yet, no.
Because, you know, we've had discussion in past months about an interconnecting trail from, you know, Sunfish Lake Park to downtown, and this is a big piece of it, that would be part of it, we'd wanna interconnect. I think we should probably wanna have at least some sort of layout of what we're doing this trail if we're eventually gonna have one going down, you know, County 14, whatever, it's a north side road, south side of the road. If we've got Sunfish Lake on the north side, this park on the north side, seems like we keep working towards the north side. If we're gonna do a trail there, we wanna make sure we keep interconnecting all of this stuff.
Correct.
Seems like we're just piecemealing this, and here we're gonna end up costing more money to change the trail to this park, where it's really, it's open, it's just an open area right now, right?
Yeah. So yeah, the staff's been in the park a number of times, so we'll, you know, after access to that, again, we'll actually be able to get in there and get a better view of it, preferably this fall, when the leaves are down, and you can kind of see where we can navigate that. Again, you know, access to those asphalt trails on the outside will just be, you know, up to those will only be like nature or like wood chip trails up there, so, you know, so in the future, could those technically be changed, you know, as we progress and build those, technically, but.
I just think we might be rushing putting this in right away. We might wanna hold off on this one, approving this trail or through this park.
Well, what I suggest is staff brings back their proposed layout
Yeah.
when they get it ready.
Adam, are you able to bring up the Washington County GIS on this so we can look at it? Or maybe you just have a map already, or a printout. I don't know if that's available. I had a question for you specific to some tiny little slivers, one which is apparently owned by the city and one that's owned by the development. Yeah, okay, so you can see the one up in the upper left-hand corner there. That one's owned by the development. Do you know what that is?
I do not.
And then there's one, I guess now that I'm saying it out loud, there's another sliver owned by the city, and maybe that's just drainage is what I guess I'm going on a limb. Yeah, you can just see it there on the upper left, northwest corner there. So that little, the very top sliver there, that's Lake Elmo property. Would that be drainage probably, or what is that?
It's yeah, it's likely an easement, because there is stormwater ponds on that legacy of North Star up there.
So right now, as far as access, it looks like it's between 3644 and 3634? Is that,
So there is the numbers that you see up there right now is like the first set of plat that's been
Yeah.
approved and set up there. There is another section where that road will continue over and make a loop in there yet. So that hasn't been finalized yet, and that's in the next
Okay.
phase. So once that's put in, you'll have a better idea what that would look like.
well, I guess my question is, how are people accessing this park?
So there is one access point that would come off that road that loops around. One access point would be approximately, wouldn't say more than 2 house width that we'd have access in there. So it wouldn't be a huge spot for any parking or, it's more just kind of more of a bump out at this point.
So you're saying that would be at the location where the development hasn't been platted out yet?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know what that spot between 3644 and 3634 is? Is that?
This one right in here.
That right there.
I mean, that's part of parcel 3640, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's, which is the parkland. But I'm
Right.
just wondering if that's supposed to be the access there?
I think this would be part of the city land. I think it's just an access point.
So I guess, yeah, my overall question is just, I guess, clarification on where the access comes from, and you had indicated there wouldn't be parking. Is down on the southeast corner, there's the drainage pond there. You have any idea whether there's enough room to extend the trail through to the road and/or put a small lot there with the drainage? The drainage isn't shown there, that pond, but it's an old satellite image. Do you have any idea?
No, I don't. At this point, we don't have any, future plans of any trail that would connect there, but like Mike said, that'd be, whether that trail, the future gateway trail along that would go on the north or south side of Stillwater Boulevard or County Road 14, that would be a accessible point right there. It's either through the development or through there, but the
Yeah.
point you were talking about right there, that parcel is owned, I believe, by the city as well.
Yeah, well, it is. I'm just wondering if there's enough room with the drainage, the pond that's there, and fair enough if you don't know. But that was my question, whether we can maneuver through that to get a trail around that. That's, or if it takes that entire spot,
Right.
so.
Yeah, I wouldn't, at this point, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Are there other questions for staff? And we could do the same. We could discuss this before taking a formal motion, or if someone objects to that, we can just make a formal motion and have our discussion from there. I guess, I'll make a motion, and my motion is not the recommended motion. My motion is to recommend that city council direct city park staff to provide a staff report to a forthcoming park commission meeting regarding the potential development of the parkland at North Star Development before beginning construction. So we know what's happening.
I second that.
Second?
I
Okay.
second
Got a
that.
second? We can discuss that motion. And I guess I'll just, my perspective, I guess Mike said the same. It seems like we need to know a little bit more information about, I'm kind of surprised that we're starting to build something. I hadn't heard anything about building anything. It hadn't been in our CIP. It hadn't been in our work plan or anything. I'm all for, generally speaking, having a nature preserve with trails where we can access this, but I would just like to see what I consider normal process before we do it. That's why I made that motion.
I am on board with the current motion. I think that also gives a nice opportunity for us to maybe consider more park benches. I know that's been a priority in other instances, just making sure that there's enough. And the length of trail seems to influence that quite a bit.
Yeah, like park benches, potentially a gazebo. I know most of this is at a slope, but potentially a gazebo. I'd like to know what kind of trails, I mean, is it bike? Is it multi-use? Is it a walking trail? Does it have the ability to connect to Stillwater Boulevard? Which, I guess the point was made that we plan for the future. I would like to see us potentially reach out to the landowners on the north side of Sunfish Lake to see if we can connect between those parks. That, to me, is a obvious thing to at least attempt to do. I'd also make a pitch for potentially a kayak canoe landing, what would you call it?
Launch.
Launch, thank you. So it just seems to me that there's some potential for this. 30 acres, not a typical site, obviously on Sunfish Lake.
Well,
I've said enough.
in my several years here, we've not done a new park, so we don't have a lot of precedence there. But we have, if we go ahead and approve what was recommended by staff, then that would not put it in compliance with what we're doing with other parks. Other parks, we're having these visioning sessions, and there's more of a talk of layout and this and that and the other. Granted, there's not going to be a lot of amenities here, but we haven't had that kind of discussion, and therefore I support the motion that we have that kind of discussion, a little bit more detail of how it fits into the neighborhood and how it would fit into the future of our interconnection with the rest of the trails. That's my opinion.
I love this discussion. I think that the trail connectivity is something that's also been brought up kind of time and again as something that we're looking at. And so if there's some opportunities here, it would be nice to be planful of that.
Further discussion, or I can call the question. So the motion is to recommend city council directs city staff to provide a staff report to a forthcoming park commission meeting regarding the potential development of parkland at North Star Development before beginning construction. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There's none. That motion passes. And we're on to the next item, which is communications.
The volleyball courts, sand volleyball courts are completed at both Pilot and Carriage Station. Some seeding has been done in the last couple weeks, so we'll continue to water that, but we've seen both volleyball parks in use. Staff continues to do garbage cleanup as well as just doing our final touches of the storm cleanup as well in a lot of our parks. We did have somebody talk about the tree cleanup. We are including that on our trails here in the last couple of weeks, so just that big storm cleanup of removing some of those trees from our trail system. So coming up in October again, our porta potties will be removed from our sites, but that should conclude our big push for the summer activities at our parks.
There further communications from commissioners.
Well, I was just thinking, after we receive the packet, and I would like to extend appreciation to Public Works for doing storm cleanup. I know there's been some big stuff to work on, so, yeah, just appreciate you folks getting out there and, making these things available to be walked in again. It's important.
Mike, did you have, it looked like you maybe had something? No? Nope. Okay. Are there future agenda items that commissioners would like to see?
One other thing to note, the concrete for the Pebble Park playground set is already set, so you'll see the playground going in the next couple
Oh.
weeks there, so. Still working on that.
Future agenda items?
Pick another park to look at.
Good, yeah, we can do that.
I'll again say the park reservation policy, which I requested last meeting, didn't make it to this agenda. So review of that would be mine. If that is all for communications, we can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Meeting is